Okay, we're back live once again here on Our Game, joined by Fintan O'Toole of the 42 and Michael Verney of the Irish Independent. First of all, we haven't seen you this week at all, Fintan. How are you getting on?
All good, lads. Yourselves?
Not too bad. What made you cry off earlier in the week?
Parental responsibilities, Shane.
And you
Unfortunately,
think
it took preference over our game.
I just didn't think that was good enough, Verney? What do you think?
That's why you never made a county, Fenton. You have to leave all those things aside and you have to be bald headed, tunnel vision towards the goal ahead, winning an All Ireland. Cork haven't won an All Ireland in a long, long time.
Yeah, it's kind of adding up, Fintan.
It's good to know lack of talent, so you're saying it nothing to do with our ability.
No, nothing to do with talent. It's all about how much you want it.
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work. We actually did a video earlier this week, Fintan. It was for OurGame Retro. We were doing the Dublin versus Kerry rivalry, and we had a little clip where we were trying to compare and contrast Tomás O'Shea and Jack McCaffrey, two brilliant wing backs of different eras. So I'm just going to play a little clip, and then maybe you give me your thoughts. Jack McCaffrey, a Footballer of the Year, Tomás O'Shea, a Footballer of the Year. Two lads who, when they got the ball and started soloing, the opposition was probably in trouble. And they're both brilliant to watch on the ball for different reasons, because Tomás O'Shea was so graceful with that sideline where he seemed to be speeding up when he actually had the ball. And like that straight-legged solo mid-stride was just class. Whereas Jack McCaffrey, pure speed demon. And I was even watching back one of the games, it might have been against Mayo, the 17 final. It was on TV the other day. And just the way he went from 45 to 45 in the blink of an eye. And all the players were doing were trying to get just anyway goal side of him, even if it meant going 10 yards away from him, because he just, even that far away from goals, I can't let him get in past me here because he's going to create a goal situation. So two brilliant wing backs, but probably for very different reasons.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned about McCaffrey in the 17 final, because again, that was probably Mayo's best chance again, because McCaffrey went off a couple of minutes later, did his cruciate that day, and when you saw the speed he was running at just before that, and you're thinking, I remember Jason Doherty trying to stay with him, and as fast as he is, just couldn't stay with him. That's why you'd say that was such a lost opportunity for Mayo, because I think Dublin were missing probably, one of their best players or one of their kind of marquee men that day. But like McCaffrey has totally changed what it means to be a wing back, and he's also changed what it means to be a wing forward when you're on him or around him. Like, he's one of the first defenders that has made a forward be a defender. Like, we talked before the All-Ireland final last year, it was like, who's going to mark Jack McCaffrey? Because it's like Stephen O'Brien is brilliant going forward. How brilliant is he going backwards? Is he going to be able to keep Jack McCaffrey out of the game? Like, Jack McCaffrey gave probably one of the best final performances we've ever seen. 1-3 from playing an All-Ireland final as a wing-back. It's a joke, really, to be able to do that. And to have that much of a stamp on the game as a wing-back, he's totally revolutionised what a half-back does.
Jack McCaffrey, a Footballer. Okay, Fintan, that was that. Tomás O'Shea, a Footballer. Your thoughts. Jack McCaffrey or Tomás O'Shea? You only get one as a Cork man.
Yeah, it's great to be choosing between Dublin and Kerry in this sort of a situation with regards to best offenders. I suppose, like, Tomás O'Shea probably would have hurt Cork more, would have seen him kind of go up against them more with obviously the frequency of which they played, especially in the 2000s. The kind of different kind of styles of players. I would associate O'Shea kind of more in the kind of defensive aspect of the game and kind of ball carrying, but the way McCaffrey plays, then it's kind of maybe a sign of how the wing back has kind of changed the role and how he's made a change. So I know he kind of rails against this notion about his defensive side of his game being maybe a bit neglected, and he's spoken about this a good bit, but it is ultimately one of the biggest weapons he brings is his attacking play. And like his performance last year in the All-Ireland final was just absolutely extraordinary. Like the drawn game, I was checking it up earlier when you were mentioning this. He scored 1-3 point with his right foot, and fist went over. And the goal was obviously absolutely outstanding. And it's just, you think about the amount of conversations before last year's, I think it was probably the replay, wasn't it? The drawn game about how were Kerry going to mark him, which is absolutely unbelievable when you think about that was probably never something in the Tomás O'Shea era of Gaelic football that was being discussed. I mean, people were saying you should put Stephen O'Brien, who was kind of a front runner for Player of the Year, he should be on McCaffrey. So I kind of will be maybe leaning down towards him because of the way he kind of makes oppositions kind of, I suppose, rethink their game and kind of pay such attention to them as a wing back. With the caveat that obviously O'Shea's durability and what he kind of did for so long for them. And then you think of 2010, so when Cork won the All-Ireland, everyone thinks about Galvin being suspended that year, but O'Shea was a massive loss as well for that down game. And I suppose you kind of see the importance as well of players kind of when they're gone. He stayed around until 2013. Kerry probably have different types of defenders now, but do they have someone kind of with that kind of, I suppose, rampage and style, didn't he? Kind of going up the right flank, and that he was kind of so kind of comfortable and saying kind of so consistent for so long. So my two players of really, really high standard, but for the way he's played over the last couple of years, McCaffrey, and the way he's come back from one, an injury, and two, a year away, and kind of slipped so seamlessly back into it. And he stepped up so quickly as well, didn't he? From the minor team in 2011, he was involved. I think, was he in 2012? I think maybe did he start then? He definitely started obviously in 13. Remember that he scored a brilliant goal against Cork that year in the quarter-final. Would actually come off at half time in that final. So he's had kind of interesting All-Ireland final experiences, as he's spoken about before, but he's a couple of Man of the Match awards as well from those games. So I'd probably, if you're asking me to call it, I'd be leaning towards him.
Yeah, and don't forget, if you want to get those jerseys that we were wearing in the videos, go to OurGameRetro.com and put in OurGame as the promo code and you get 15% off. Right, so we've plenty that we want to get through today, which is the topics are best senior hurling championship manager to never win an All-Ireland. We're going to go back to our best All-Ireland series, the best All-Ireland winner the last 16 years. We're at the quarter-final stage. We're going to look at Tyrone 05 against Dublin 17. And then the first of our sliding doors moments that we're going to do today is Ryan O'Dwyer's red card. In 2013, Dublin were a point up against Cork in the All-Ireland semi-final, playing really well, gets a second yellow card. So we're going to look at the sliding doors moment that is. But before we get into any of those topics, Michael Verney, you've got your latest Who Am I, the first clue.
Yeah, just starting off, this is which should be the hardest of the four clues. We'll drip feed them out as the show goes on, and we'll finish the show with what I think is the easiest of the four clues. But the start of it here is, I've soldiered for my county for over a decade and was rewarded with my sole All-Ireland Senior Football Championship medal at the tail end of my career. So I soldiered for my county for over a decade and was rewarded with my sole All-Ireland Senior Football Championship medal at the tail end of my career. And just to help people out a little bit, it's, I'll say it's from 2000 onwards. We're not going back to 1950s or 1940s or anything like that. We'll just say it's a player who has played in the last 20 years.
Okay, people get your comments in. Graham Canty? That's the first one that comes to mind. Am I anywhere close there?
It's not Graham Canty.
Fintan?
Wait for a second, but I'm going to say it's either a Cork or Dublin player, because from what I remember, those are match their own team in the early 2000s. They had a kind of new players, whereas kind of associate the Dublin 2011, Cork 2010 with a few guys who were coming towards the tail, got the one that they craved.
Tomas Quinn, Massey Quinn?
No, we'll stay going for the second clue in a few minutes.
Okay, first topic today: the best All-Ireland, the best manager not to win a senior All-Ireland. Now, in the past five, it was basically Kilkenny for a long spell there, so there's a huge amount of managers not getting near Liam McCarthy. But we've had 5 different winners over the past 5 seasons. Who's coming to mind for you when? I'll start off with you, Fintan. When it comes to All-Ireland or managers who haven't won an All-Ireland, who comes to mind to you straight away?
Just 3 that come to mind, and again, this is probably recency bias, but they'd be Derek McGrath, Anthony Daly, and Anthony Cunningham. You'd be thinking when you look at McGrath, well, he's gone from Waterford. He seems the type of guy you'd be thinking that he's going to get another go, wouldn't you? Kind of senior in the county management, whether that be Waterford or somewhere else. But I suppose I'm kind of waiting this out to look at their general managerial impact. He won all Ireland medals at schools level with the De La Salle teams. He had some success at club level with De La Salle. And you think of where Waterford were when he took over and how badly his first year went and the kind of transformative impact he had on them and getting them so close. It seemed like the natural kind of cycle. They lost a semi-final in 15, semi-final replay in 16. They get to the final in 17 and then lose narrowly to Galway. So he'd be one for me. And then Anthony Daly, obviously we've touched on the sliding doors moment later about Dublin's progress and success that he had, winning the league in 2011, winning Leinster in 13, obviously didn't end well in 14. And then I think as well it's probably overlooked the job he did with Clare earlier on at a time when it really wasn't easy coming in the post-Loughnane era, but had a couple of bad days. When was the day that they lost very heavily to Waterford first day out? Was that 04 maybe? But it's kept them competitive. A couple of All-Ireland semi-final appearances. 05 being obviously the big one, where probably were well in the driving seat that day against Cork, who were played back in the last quarter. So kind of the cumulative work that he would have done as a manager. And then Anthony Cunningham it ticks a lot of boxes with the football side, first of all, success with Gary Castle, more recently then with Roscommon, previously with St. Bridget's as well. Wins at 21 All-Ireland with Galway in 2011. The Galway senior thing then, it obviously didn't end well for him, with kind of stuff off the pitch and the way that they lost that 2015 final, and kind of the manner of the second half performance, given how impressive they looked at half time in that game. But to kind of get them to 2 finals, and kind of again, they were coming from a base where they didn't get over the line under him, but they weren't really in a position to even get to that stage. There was a couple of seasons before, they kept them kind of crumbling against Waterford teams. Kind of remember in Curtis and qualifiers. So I think he's a good case and a good strong shout there.
Who's coming to mind for you, Mike?
Yeah, Derek McGrath would definitely be one that springs to mind, because if we're talking to Waterford players from this current generation in 30 years' time, they'll still be talking about Derek McGrath. They'll still be talking about the impact that he had. Similarly, if we're talking to Dublin hurlers in 20 years' time, they will talk about the impact that Dalo had. I don't think the way it worked out that Galway players will be talking about Anthony Cunningham, but that's not to say that he didn't do an unbelievable job. And obviously that Leinster final in 2012, and he came in and just kind of changed the mentality a lot. I think he turned around the physical condition of a lot of their players. Like Joe Canning was in different physical shape once Cunningham came in. He changed. He's not going to get the credit. He didn't get the credit maybe after Micheál Donoghue, because Micheál Donoghue got them over the line. But it's one of these things. It's kind of a selfless thing where he won't get the credit, but he did play a massive part and did leave them in a better position than they were when he picked them up. They'd probably 3 that would spring to mind. Looking back into the past, Len Gaynor would be one that would spring to mind too. I was kind of going back through the list of managers that, losing maybe All-Ireland final managers or losing semi-finalists. He would definitely be one. I remember the whole crack around him and Loughnane coming up to the 97 final. And I remember that there was a kind of an edict down from Croke Park that both of them had to sit on a bench for the duration of the 1997 All-Ireland final. And then there was the excuse after. They were both up off the bench after about 5 minutes. But they both said that the benches were freshly painted and that their tracksuit bottoms or trousers were being destroyed. But he would have had, obviously, it's funny that he ended up coming up against Clare in 97, because again, much like Cunningham in Galway, he was the one that set the platform for Loughnane to come in. He did really, really well with Clare.
Well, here's the question. There's a few of these managers who we're going to talk about now that obviously played a big part. I mean, Eamon O'Shea is someone who did he took over a Tipperary team in 2013 that was kind of on the floor. Didn't happen for him in 2013, losing to Limerick and losing to Kilkenny. 2014 got really, really close, taking Kilkenny to a replay. 2015 lose a cracker of a semi-final to Galway, and those fine margins. But then the following year, the team goes on and wins, and Michael Ryan has credited Eamon O'Shea for a lot of the work he did. Then Len Gaynor, he did a lot of the groundwork for 4 years with Clare. They go and win the All-Ireland next year under the selector, Gerald Loughnane. And then, like you've mentioned, Anthony Cunningham as well. He does a lot of the groundwork. Micheál Donoghue comes in and he adds that extra ingredient to get him over the line. So even just out of those 3, if we just pick those 3, Fintan, I'll start with you. Is there any of them that you'd give as the front runner here? Because we're all going to pick our number 1.
Shane, 1 second now. Sorry, now 1 second. I cannot have Eamon O'Shea in this conversation. I really can't, because I know it's the manager. The manager is what you're looking at, right? He was a pivotal cog in 2010. It's not. I don't even think it's overplayed how much of a cog he was in 2010. And then he wins an All-Ireland as a coach in 2019 as well. Fair enough. I understand what you're saying. He was manager for 3 years and they didn't win an All-Ireland, but to say, if we were to vote that Eamon O'Shea was the most influential or was the best manager to have never win an All-Ireland, I think that's a bit of a joke, because he has won All-Irelands, and fair enough, he wasn't. I know you're going to say, it's the manager and the coach are a different thing, but come on. I think it would be like the same as saying that Rory Gallagher is the best football manager to have never won. Fair enough, he didn't manage, but he did coach in a non-traditional county, so I can't have him to the forefront of this conversation.
Fintan, do you want to dance in my head as well?
No, I completely agree with that, because you see, it's not even that if you think about when he took over as manager, in many ways it felt like it was a continuation of his role in the way he was viewed in the squad. And I mean, we're talking about how...
Well, no, he took over after Declan Ryan. Like, I mean, Tip had just lost by 18 points to Kilkenny, and he had to pick the team up off the floor.
But it wasn't like he was picking up a different new squad that he hadn't worked with in 2010. It wasn't like these players were alien to him. You know, they were all very comfortable with his style of play and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, I remember someone describing last year, he was the most overqualified Mayor Ishka to ever be on All-Ireland final day in Croke Park last year, with the way that Sheedy was sending him in for instructions. And I know they've all completely downplayed his role last year, but I mean, you know, you look at the way he was in the sideline of the Wexford game. I mean, he was definitely the most consulted Mayor Ishka I've seen anyway towards the end of a championship in Croke Park. I mean, like, if you're going to go down that road of criteria, then technically you're going to bring Justin McCarthy into this, because I think he was a coach of Cork in the 80s, but then technically didn't win it as manager with Waterford. So, I think in the establishment of the criteria, I'm with Michael here as regards ruling Eamon O'Shea.
But you're happy enough to start talking about Anthony Cunningham's football achievement when a lot of good hurling men would discount him altogether just by virtue of ever picking up a football.
Well, we can discount the football achievements if you want. They're just merely background information to portray the rounded character and the managerial prowess.
Yeah, see, this is the beauty of criteria around here. We'll pick and choose as it suits us, and there's no bigger culprit than myself.
Well, yeah, but I just don't think O'Shea can come into this equation because of the fact that he was just so central as a coach, and like it's within the same decade. I mean, he's had 3 different roles in decade, and was heavily involved in 2 different sets of All-Ireland wins. Yeah,
I find that very impressive. I agree with you there. Can I just jump on to a little bit more about Len Gaynor, because we're trying to compare these managers who set up an awful lot of the work for a team to ultimately go on and win All-Ireland. But Len Gaynor did an interview with Cian O'Connell there a while back, and he goes, "I was finishing up my career, but in 1977, 78 and 79 we won 3 county finals in a row. That's with Killeron McDonagh. I was managing the team and playing as well. Then I retired after that, and we went on and won another county final in 85 and won the All-Ireland Club final then in 86. So beaten in 2 Munster finals, gets tipped to be honest, in Tipperary that would be seen as a failure to lose Munster and All-Ireland finals in 1997. And then compare and contrast him with Anthony Cunningham, won a first ever Leinster title in 2012. That was a big deal and people didn't see it coming. Got to a couple of All-Ireland finals, a replay in 2012. Maybe should have won one. So even just between those two, before we move on to any more, who would you pick, Fintan?
I'd probably pick Cunningham. On the basis of, like, I would give a lot of, I suppose it's different eras and all that. But say that All-Ireland semi-final win over Tip in 15. You know, that was a team that had kind of flatlined a bit. Like, the team had kind of changed a bit from the team of 15 was different from the team of 12. You almost had to kind of reinvent it a bit again, because I mean, the way they lost the Tip in 14 was a really bad blow. I mean, they had that game completely won, and then James Barry kind of went in full back, Buddy Marr came out, and Tip kind of turned it around. Callan caught fire. So I think kind of the work that he did there, and you know, like I suppose the job he did in 2012 against Leinster in Kilkenny in the Leinster final. And you know, at halftime in 2015, I did think the way they performed that first half, were they up by 3? Was it like 14 points or something they had hit, maybe 15? Completely flatlined in the second half, and then what followed in that winter is what the era will be kind of remembered for. But I think as well, like going back to what Michael was saying earlier, that he maybe, like, it isn't the kind of fondness with which, you know, the Dublin Waterford players remember Daly and McGrath, but I do think it's privately acknowledged that, say, he wasn't there, some of the longer serving players weren't there when they finally got over the line in 17. But I think it was, without kind of explicitly saying it, various people did touch on it, that there was a lot of people that had done a lot of work, and in particular I think it was his kind of management era that kind of was the launch pad for when Donoghue then obviously came in and took it on. And maybe Conor Whelan is probably one of the guys that springs to mind, was kind of one of the new players then, but largely by and by with the players it was kind of the same one.
Okay, Michael, I'll throw it to you in a second, but just to mention a couple of other guys in case we forget. John Myler had a couple of spells with Kerry and of course beat Waterford famously in 1993 with them. Also with Wexford, Carlow took Cork to an All-Ireland semi-final and close to the final, of course. I'm sure he still agonises over that. Tom Ryan could have won a couple of All-Irelands with Limerick in the 90s. Colin Bonner, some might say Kieran Kingston. I think Michael Ryan with Watford did some good work with Westmeath. Watford obviously had a huge amount of titles in ladies football as well, which of course doesn't come into the conversation. The late Jim Nelson was suggested by Shane Brophy. He goes, and was quotes on the 42 actually from Sambo about him saying his greatest achievement was that Antrim played 8 years in Division 1. Now this is the manager who got them to the All-Ireland final in 89. It proved that a so-called weaker team could compete at the highest level. He was into healthy living, a concept that was ahead of his time, and he introduced 2 balls into a hurling drill to keep the intensity going. Long before that idea became commonplace. We hadn't seen it before. We were given free boots and tracksuits, and players' partners were also well looked after. He actually did talk in that interview, I think Jackie Cahill did it, whereby players would go along to the match and their wives would have to pay in, but he sort of changed it and made sure that they got on free and got in free and got a cup of tea and so on. Michael?
Anybody, like, who else do I think comes into that? Like, suppose like, the main ones you mentioned there. Like, I don't think Kieran Kingston will come into that conversation. In my opinion, like his first spell as Cork manager was a bit of a disaster at times. Even been beaten by Wexford in that game. If they do something over the next couple of years, he'll come into it. He did obviously win a Munster title with them, and they were beaten in an All-Ireland semi-final and beaten quite resoundingly. So I don't really think he comes into it. Tom Ryan is definitely one that stands out. Like Limerick played nearly the guts of more than a half of an All-Ireland final in '96 with 15 against 14. They should have been winning that game. And in 1994, obviously, you have the 5-minute final against Offaly, so he'd be definitely one that would be high up in the conversation as well. Of other ones, yeah, like kind of got thinking about it when you think about like who's around now and some of the club managers that are around now and some of the managers that have had kind of club success, and like the last like 3 or 4 All-Ireland club hurling winners really stand out because they're all of a kind of a certain age, like modern. And like Henry Shefflin, obviously, with Ballyhale the last 2 years, Matty Kenny with your own Coola, and then Shane O'Neill from the Piercing. So Shane O'Neill is obviously in inter-county management now with Galway, and Matty's in with Dublin. So I'd be interested to get your thoughts. I'd have an idea in my head who I think will be the first to win a senior All-Ireland, and I'd like to get yours.
Wow, that's interesting. I think Dublin are a little bit away from it at the moment, and you wonder with Kilkenny, right? So Brian Cody's probably going to be there for another couple of years anyway, whether he steps away himself or whether, I don't know, pressure comes from the public, because obviously this year is the drive for 5 years without an All-Ireland. But if Henry Shefflin comes in, he's probably going to be at a stage that TJ Reid is 35, we'll say, so maybe he will be still a brilliant hurler, I'm not sure. Richie Hogan is going to be a similar age, and the injury toll at that stage. Will they have as many star men to win an All-Ireland? Not 100% sure if Dublin will either at that stage. So I think Shane O'Neill might actually be the most likely of those 3. Fintan?
The thing is all about Shefflin, just when you touch him, he did a very good interview a couple of weeks ago with Michael Scotty, Vincent Hogan in The Independent, and kind of read between the lines, like it was kind of everything that's going on at the moment in sport, but also his decision to step down with Ballyhale. And he kind of struck me like a man that needed a break from hurling, that it was just been so intense the last couple of years. And I mean, look, you know better than I would as regards to kind of club commitments, but how those kind of marathon campaigns, okay, it ended in January this year, but the previous one had gone on St. Patrick's Day, and it kind of been non-stop for him. And I also got the impression, don't know, is he kind of too keen being the man to take over from Cody? Look, if the opportunity arose, maybe he might feel differently, but he didn't seem to be kind of entertaining the thought of it too much. And I just wonder, would it be something, you know, he's still kind of young enough in his managerial career that he'd prefer to let kind of slide, let slide for a while. I suppose, yeah, you're kind of saying about Shane O'Neill, he was an interesting choice. He was kind of a bit left field in terms of kind of going to Galway, but you know, the work he did with the Piercings, like the players obviously would speak very highly of kind of the role that Alan Cunningham would have played there and kind of getting them over the line. I mean, they had a brilliant Munster record. Maybe the fact that won All-Ireland from 4, I'd say probably maybe irks for them a little bit, and not managing to get another one out of that. Just one other that I'll throw in from the kind of 90s era, don't necessarily think he'd be number one here, would be Matty Murphy. For a time when the National League, I think, meant a good bit more and was probably a more prestigious competition. He did win a couple of them. Okay, didn't get the All-Ireland senior. Probably the most successful All-Ireland minor manager there ever will be. Will it? You know, I think he won 5 or 6 in the end. I agree with Michael. I probably have someone like Tom Ryan ahead of him. but he'd probably be in the conversation anyway for kind of the impact he had, and like he kind of did a lot of stuff at other levels as well. But yeah, definitely there is a good few current contenders, and it's probably a sign as well that the standard of the club game has risen in both football and hurling in terms of what the players are producing, and then the kind of calibre of manager that's being attracted. Like you think Michael Ryan goes from Tipperary senior hurling manager and then takes over a club in Limerick, and it just seems like kind of more natural move than ever now, doesn't it? At the very kind of top of the club game, kind of moving between that and county.
I think it's worth giving Sambo McNaughton a mention as well. He's had 3 spells in charge of Antrim. Michael Verney, you mentioned Tom Ryan first off before Fintan did, and the circumstances in which they lost those All-Irelands, so being well ahead against Offaly, being against 14 men, possibly a little knock on him now for not managing the situations mid-game. Very difficult to do in a game of hurling at that intensity, but I'd probably just about kind of knock him out of the contention for that. And I'm struggling to actually pick one here. I'd say it's possibly looking like, is it looking about like Anthony Cunningham, Derek McGrath? Are we kind of narrowing it down that way? I mean, we're all going to pick our own one, but Michael, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, I'd be picking Anthony Daly myself, just because of his achievements with 2 non-traditional counties. Obviously took Clare very, very close, having just finished up his own county career. They should have beaten Cork in that 05 semi-final, an absolute belter of a game. Like, I remember those 05 semi-finals, they were poles apart. That was 16-15. And Cork came with a kind of flourish at the end. But that was real kind of tight stuff. And then the other semi-final had Galway 5-18, Kilkenny 4-18, poles apart. He obviously went on, he was over Clare for 3 years, I think. Then he went on and brought Dublin closer than anybody has brought them in the last God knows how long. And we're going to talk about it later, a sliding doors moment that could have kind of, I suppose, unearthed. God only knows how Dublin hurling would have exploded if they had eventually won the All-Ireland in 2013. I'd probably have Dalo top of the tree for me, just because he's done it with 2 different counties. Anthony Cunningham will be a close second. And just on the Shane O'Neill, Henry Shefflin, Matty Kenny thing, I think it could be really interesting, particularly in 3 or 4 years. I'll make a couple of bold predictions. I think Matty Kenny will be over Galway. I think Shane O'Neill will be over Limerick. And I think Henry will be over Kilkenny. And then I think it's going to be really, really interesting. I think Shane O'Neill could be the man to take over from John Kiley in Limerick. And I think, if I'm looking at it, I think he's the most likely to win an All-Ireland first of those 3. But I think those 3 could be over 3 really high-profile counties. They're native counties in the next 4 or 5 years. And I think, it could be very interesting times.
That's some hot takes right there. One of the things that was said about Daly when he was with Dublin was that there were an awful lot of yo-yo seasons, a good one followed by a bad one. Derek McGrath, you could say his first season and his last season both didn't go certainly the way they planned in terms of results anyway. But I'd probably just about give it to Derek, because some of the days out were incredible with that Waterford team. I think Anthony Cunningham's in the conversation. Obviously Eamon O'Shea is in the conversation, Fintan. So I'm going to go with Derek.
He's in your own conversation, I think. Go
on, Fintan. Who do you pick?
I think I'll just go for Cunningham. I think that Daly point is a good one about the kind of yo-yo aspect of it. And it wasn't just like, there's a natural slide for a lot of teams that kind of do well one year, but I mean, it was a real kind of a fall in 12 and 14, and it ended. He's talked about this, about kind of not being able to kind of, I suppose, get up to the intensity of like going so close in 11 and 13, and maybe slipping into a zone thinking you're closer than you are then in the following season. Cunningham would just edge Derek for me, and then, but it'll be excluded recently biased, Tom Ryan would be the big one then from the 90s, because especially when you think of where Limerick had come from at that time, and look, he's probably kind of haunted about the way it turned out and all that, but even to kind of win a couple of those Munster championships was a serious old achievement.
Shane, with a comment in from Joe Carroll, who he plays senior club hurling there with Ross Gray. He said Davy Fitz. He said no one counts that soft All-Ireland one in Clare in 2013. For which you tagged Derek Lynch and with a kind of a little ouchy kind of a gif, and he's actually after replying factually incorrect. So he's not happy with that one. Kieran McBride said Dalo, Oisin Murphy, Anthony Cunningham, Eamon O'Shea and Derek McGrath. You have someone actually agreeing with you about Eamon O'Shea. First two laid down the groundwork for the subsequent All-Irelands that their counties won. Your brother Paddy said John Stapleton, so you might have to expand on that a small bit.
That's the old lad. He'd be known as a legendary manager down home. The sort of lad who he has a notepad, and he'd actually wear something like this, a big old puffy jacket. He'd have a pair of shoes and a tracksuit on, and he'd have the clipboard out, and he'd be writing out the teams, all capital letters now, by the way, for every player in the team. Legendary manager in Bursley.
There's another one, Shane. We couple of comments in. Alan T just said Eamon O'Shea hugely influential on the tactics of the game currently. He doesn't really agree that he should be in the manager category. Anne O'Neill is the opposite. She says, I agree with you, Shane. You might want to give Anne a text or a ring and just say thanks. James S says, he's talking about Liam Cahill here. Liam Cahill discarded some serious experience. Maura Shannon and Connors from Waterford could have been used to bring on younger players in group. He will regret it, in my opinion. So that's an interesting one that will play out. And just on that as well, on my first clue, and I'll go in and give the second clue now if that's okay, but Thomas O'Shea has guessed Benny Tierney, which is an interesting guess, not a bad guess. It's not correct, but the second clue is, I'll just do the first clue again first. I soldiered for my county for over a decade and was rewarded with my sole All-Ireland Senior Football Championship medal at the tail end of my career. The second clue is, injury meant that I played no part that day, but I did have a sweet left foot, which helped me pick up 2 All-Stars.
Ooh, Fintan.
Left foot.
Left foot, All-Ireland.
If you think you know, don't say the answer, but just keep it, because I want to keep the viewers interested here until the end. But there's still a good few people that it could be. We haven't even narrowed down the county yet.
Okay, well look, for now, we'll move on for now. So we've had this Best All-Ireland series of the past 16 years, and we've gone through the round of 16. We're now in the quarter-final stage, and the first quarter-final matchup is Tyrone 2005 against Dublin 2017. So it's like, basically, if you can have these two teams playing against each other, who'd win it? Now, Fintan, I'll throw it to you first. This Tyrone team in 2005 had to play something like 10 games, whereas Dublin coasted through pretty much every game in 2017. So I'd argue that the Tyrone team in 05 got up to a higher level than that Dublin team in 2017 ever needed to. Now maybe there was more in them, but we saw more from Tyrone.
Yeah, I'd say the only time that Dublin team, and look, it was no fault of their own as the guys who they were playing, was that final. I think was probably the best of the Dublin Mayo finals. I mean, it was pretty exceptional as a guide standard. I mean, they blew Tyrone away in the semi-final. Everyone was expecting Tyrone to kind of mount a real challenge. The opposition they faced in Leinster just hasn't really been a factor for a good few years now. Whereas that Tyrone team, I mean, you look at the kind of games they played. They had to beat Cavan after a replay. Then a couple of brilliant games at Armagh. That was the time when the Ulster finals were in Croke Park, and like they were absolutely huge occasions, weren't they? I mean,
yeah, 3 games against Armagh at Croker is insane.
Yeah, and the third one for me, I think it was on maybe Air Sport, was it? Maybe a few, maybe about a month ago or something like that. I generally think it's one of the best games I've ever seen. I wasn't at it now, just watched it on TV, but I just remember, you know, like at that stage there were just so many big names involved on both sides. You had the whole thing about McGeeney coming off, Canavan putting over the free, the fact that they played 2 games. There was a couple of people sent off, wasn't there, the Ulster final that year? A couple of suspensions as well, I think, might have been coming to the equation. As well as that, they're obviously coming off the replay win over Dublin. You had the old Mulligan goal. You know, like, if you think they were kind of derided in some quarters when they came through in 03, the way they won the semi-final against Kerry and the game against Armagh, I think this was the year where their attacking ability kind of cut loose. You know, I was looking at it earlier as regards the forward line. Dooher, McGuigan, Mellon in the half forward line, full forward line, Canavan, O'Neill, Mulligan. I mean, that full forward line especially must be one of the greatest of the last few decades. I mean, 4 of them won All-Stars that year, and then McGuigan probably, like, he really should have won one, I think, you know, with his kind of centre forward play.
In some ways,
it would have been. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, in some ways, you're almost criticising this team or knocking this Dublin team because the calibre of opposition was so poor. Like, Tyrone had to play replays 3 times just to get this far. Michael, anything stand out for you particularly about either team here that would give them an edge?
Yeah, a couple of things that you said there. It's the quality of the opposition that they beat in the final. So Tyrone beat Kerry in 05, a Kerry team that was absolutely hell-bent on retribution from 03. Kerry had won the final in 04 and went on to win in 06 and 07. So that's the calibre of team. They basically stopped a 4 in a row, if you know what I mean. Mayo in 17, that Mayo team has obviously never won one. As good as they are, they've never won one. And we're talking about, like, Tyrone obviously did an interesting path to the final with the 10 games. But, like, losing to Armagh after a replay, that Armagh team, like, really, of all the teams that only won All Ireland, that Armagh team should have won more. That was a brilliant Armagh team. Probably because they were coming up against the likes of this Tyrone team, that's why they didn't. They obviously got the retribution later on in the year as well, but that's the quality of opposition that they were playing against. Just a couple of things that I kind of thought was interesting. Fintan mentioned O'Mulligan's goal in 05, which kind of turned the game and in a way turned their season around a bit as well. So, like, they were down a goal at that stage in the All-Ireland quarter-final replay. Mulligan got the goal. They went on and won by what? They won by 7 in that game after. Helped turn the game and turn their season somewhat. And then I kind of contrasted that with, not saying Dublin didn't need anything to turn their season, but there was a lot of confidence in Tyrone going into that All-Ireland semi-final in 18. Con gets this absolute wonder goal stolen down the heart of the Tyrone defence at the start of the game. And all of a sudden, Tyrone's game plan is for nothing. Like, they didn't know what to do. They were chasing the game. Mickey Hart said after, we didn't expect to be behind. And it's just kind of like, I suppose it's two moments maybe that not turned the season. The Mulligan goal definitely turned Tyrone's and the game, whereas Con's goal just showed this is just a different animal of a Dublin side. So I just kind of thought that was interesting. But for the quality of opposition beaten in finals, Tyrone would definitely edge it for me. And as Fintan says there, like, that full forward line is like as good as any full forward line. That's a dream full forward line that you picking from 32 counties, not just picking from one county. And the iconic moment, as Fintan says, of Mulligan handing Canavan the ball to hit that free against Armagh in the semi-final. Sure, that's up there. It's up there with one of the great moments. Tyrone 05 would be edging it for me. And perhaps, as you say, Dublin are victims of their own success and maybe of their own greatness as well, that they're not been challenged the whole way through. Look at the Tyrone run. Like, Cavan drew with them, Armagh drew with them, and then they lost to them. They drew at Dublin. They had really tight games. They beat Armagh a point, beat Kerry a goal. Dublin in 17, beat Carlow 12, hammered Westmeath. Beat Kildare by 9 in the end. Hammered Monaghan, hammered Tyrone, and then a really tight final with Mayo. So it's not their fault, but I just think Tyrone would be edging it for me.
There's got to be a couple of great matchups here. I'm looking at that half back line in midfield and even half forward line as well for Dublin. Like Johnny Cooper, John Small, Jack McCaffrey, Brian Fenton, James McCarthy, Kieran Kilkenny, Conor O'Callaghan, and Owen O'Gara as names in the wing forward there, but he didn't necessarily play there. Fintan, is there any particular matchups that stand out to you?
Yeah, I think it's just how that defence would have kind of handled the Tyrone forward line. The Dublin backs kind of stands out, because it's interesting actually just looking at who started in the attack for Dublin that day. What jumped out for me was the 6 subs that they brought on were Paul Flynn, Diarmuid Connolly, Bernard Brogan, Cormac Costello, Kevin McMenamin and Niles Scully. So we've gone about the attacking talent Tyrone had. I mean, the options that Dublin were able to bring on were absolutely crazy that day. I mean, I suppose if we're going to say that it's going to be a traditional forward line, are you thinking Dooher on McCaffrey, Keane O'Sullivan playing a traditional centre back on McGuigan, and then John Small, Ryan Mellon, then inside then like Cooper, McMahon, Fitzsimons? Like, it's been a thing said about Dublin a lot that the full back line is the way you can get at them. But I mean, all 3 of those are absolutely class defenders. All 3 have got, they're all stars. And I think while McMahon probably came first and established himself, I think over the last couple of years people have seen how good Cooper and Fitzsimons are. So the 3 of them going up against the Canavan, O'Neill, Mulligan, and we'll play it on the 2005 terms where Tyrone leaves the 3 of them inside. It's man on man, and there isn't a situation where they're bringing guys back. I think that'd be fairly brilliant individual battles to watch. Stephen
O'Neill was Footballer of the Year in 2005. A Dublin player didn't get Footballer of the Year in 2017. That was Andy Moran. Is there anything to be read into that, Michael?
There probably is a bit to be read on it, because a couple of the reasons that he got Footballer of the Year were his performances in the final on various Dublin defenders. So there is something on that. Like, I do think it does take away from an all, like, don't get me wrong, to the lads involved, it doesn't take away at all. But to us, kind of looking back on it, it does. Does it take away from Dublin's dominance a small bit that like one player didn't shine above, the team they beat in the final to be crowned footballer of the year? I think it does. I think it does a small bit. Shane, I have to read out a comment here. It's actually not related to the debate, but it's absolutely brilliant. John S. Lads, I am late to the show, so might have been discussed. But what's the crack with Michael's moustache? Is he going for an audition for a movie about Billy Byrne? Oh Lord, jeez, Billy Byrne and his porn star moustache. Jesus, the first day, once this video finishes, I'll be going for a shave.
There's probably a video to be done of the greatest porn moustaches in GAA history.
There could be, yeah. Billy Burns would definitely be up there. Jerry McInerney as well, like the Tom Sellecks of the GAA world almost.
Yeah, I think Keane O'Sullivan was rocking one for Dublin there for a while.
That's right. That was awful, but he's a handsome man and he was able to pull it off.
Fintan?
I presume all the viewers are going to hope games come back at some stage. If this is the content, we end up going down. If we're exhausting all sorts of GA topics and we're at this in about 6 weeks' time.
Yeah, don't sniff at it. Okay, so let's choose here. Fintan, who are you going for?
I'm going with Tyrone. I'm going to stick with what I said originally. Again, I would agree with the point you're making, but it's not Dublin's fault. But that 2005, I think even a lot of people remember that it was 10 games they had to play through in All-Ireland. I think it's the strongest of their 3 All-Ireland wins, and it's a kind of an epic campaign, epic journey during the summer. So I'd be going for them.
Yeah, I'd agree with Fintan, definitely. And it's the passage, as I read out the passage to the final, like, did so much hardship on the way to the final, and they were still able to deliver, a brilliant performance. And that was a brilliant final. I think it's a really underrated final in 05. I think Tomas O'Shea came up and got a goal to keep it really alive near the end. But as Fintan says, like that forward line, like we mentioned the full forward line, but even the half forward line and the matchups like Dewar on McCaffrey, that really makes me think, Jesus, they could give them an awful lot of trouble. And they'd just be given the edge to Tyrone, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll put it out for a public vote, but just for my own 2 cents, I'd just about give it to Dublin. I think because they were wiping so many teams with the floor during the 5 in a row, that they're probably, they weren't tested enough to see their greatness. But even in this final, Jack McCaffrey goes off early because he has a cruciate. They have to dip into the bench so much. Different players at different times had to come out. I just about give it to them because I just think they were right at the peak of their powers. Everyone talks about 18, especially 19, that some of these great players were just about hanging on. So I think that Dublin team might just about edge that brilliant Tyrone team. But we'll throw it out to the vote. We'll move on now to the next Who Am I, Michael?
Yeah, we have no correct guesses so far, so I'll just go back through the previous county for over a decade and was rewarded with my sole All-Ireland Senior Football Championship medal at the tail end of my career. Second clue, injury meant that I didn't play a part that day, but I did have a sweet left foot which helped me pick up 2 All-Stars. Next clue is I regularly marked some of the best forwards in the game, including a particularly special redhead.
Oh.
I regularly marked some of the best forwards in the game, including a particularly special redhead.
So All-Ireland, All-Star, left-footed. Oh, Fintan?
Yeah, this is the one I think gives it. Anthony Lynch?
Good work, Fintan. Good work, my friend. I'll read out the last clue here. I think this would have helped people. It would have got them thinking as well. I represented Ireland at international rules level, although I was best known in red, despite winning an All-Ireland in white. So I think that would have helped people out an awful lot. You definitely would have had the county narrowed down anyway. But yeah, Anthony Lynch to me was one of those really maybe. I know he got 2 All-Stars, but I think still think he was somewhat underrated. He put up some great displays against the Gooch when Kerry were going unbelievably well. And he had a sweet left foot. He's a real kind of tigerish defender. Because he wasn't playing in the 2010 final, maybe he doesn't get talked about enough now as he should.
Okay, we're going to have a quick little clip from the Fergal Hartley interview that I did this week, and you can get on OurGame.ie. We'll come back then and we're going to talk about the we've one other topic yet, the sliding door, so we'll be back in a second with that. Another one of your teammates, well, it was Ken McGrath. He told me to ask you about the story where he saved you over in the Canaries. Does that ring a bell?
Pass. I can't remember that one, Shane. No, move on to the next one.
Well, I've no idea what the story is. Can you even give us a kind of a PG version of
it? It was late, I'd say, Shane. It was very late in the evening, and we had a few side owners throughout the evening, and there's some local Spanish guys who we stumbled out in front of, and they didn't take kindly to it. Ken saying he saved me now would be a slight exaggeration. I do remember seeing the back of Ken's runners, all right, so one back for the hotel. But no, Ken saved me now would be no, not my recollection of the story. Anyway.
Very, very enjoyable chat with Fergal Hartley, so you can catch the rest of that on OurGame.ie. We'll move on to the sliding doors moments now in GA history. This is something we're going to revisit in different shows, but we're going to start off with Ryan O'Dwyer's red card in 2013. Dublin were a point ahead of Cork in the All-Ireland semi-final, moving very, very well. Your own Cork, Fintan. I think that this was a huge moment because this was Dublin's chance to win an All-Ireland. The teams left at that stage were obviously Dublin, Cork, the other semi-final, Cork or Clare, Limerick. None of these teams had won an All-Ireland. Well, obviously Brian Murphy of Cork had won an All-Ireland, but other than that, you're looking at 4 novice teams. I think Dublin would have went on and won an All-Ireland, and who knows what that would have done for them afterwards. I think it was a very harsh red card, harsh 2 yellow cards. The first one especially. I think it was a huge moment.
Yeah, it was massive, and I think it's like in a wider sense. I think that season kind of stands out. Say until Limerick had won in 2018, I think more and more Cork, Dublin, and Limerick were together, looking back on that, going, "God, that really was our chance that season." And in fairness, even the Limerick team in 2018 had changed significantly from 13. So like it's remembered as this kind of great open summer, but I kind of also look at it as summer kind of big missed opportunities for Cork and Dublin. Like it was the game that like kind of got away from Dublin. They were starting to get on top as the second half progressed. I think Anthony Daly's written in his book that the half back line was what he was kind of targeting. He actually made a reference I read before to Michael talked earlier about the Cork Clare game in 2005 and how he couldn't get past his Clare team, that great Cork half back line of Gardner, Hearn and Sean Oak, and how he felt that Cork's defence just wasn't up to that kind of standard in 13, and they went after it. And I mean, they were coming in on the back of, building slowly, winning the league in 11, the slump in 12, and like confidence really high. I mean, they absolutely blitzcalled it in that year in the Leinster final. And the thing I remember that game was the atmosphere was absolutely incredible. And like going on to what you're kind of getting at, if Dublin had won the All-Ireland, what it could have done for hurling in the city and the kind of impact. Probably got a taste of that game in terms of the kind of occasion and all that. And it was a big thing for Cork to be in that semi-final as well. I know they'd been in it the year before, but I mean, they beat Kilkenny, the All-Ireland champions, the previous game, come off a Leinster final defeated, Jim Barry Murphy back, and the fact that Tip and Kilkenny were gone from the equation, it did kind of stand as a big moment. I mean, so like the O'Dwyer signing up, but I still think the goal as well later on in the game was equally as big in terms of it wasn't really until that moment that Cork kind of got a foothold, 5 points in, and probably in the end kind of flattered them a bit. But definitely for a lot of Dublin players, they discovered afterwards how big a chance that was, because it's just been so hard for them to kind of get back to that stage. And a good few of them obviously have moved on since when you look at that starting 15.
Because I would have seen Dublin as favourites to win the All-Ireland final if they had to get through. Now, there was definitely a decision on the field that I didn't agree with at the time, and I still don't, which was that Niall Corcoran was left as the spare man at the back because, he was kept as the spare man. Even when Dublin were down to 14 men, they had a spare man at the back. I would have thought that Peter Kelly would be the man to do that because he was such a brilliant ball carrier at that time. He was at the peak of his powers. So you were almost looking at 4 against 6 at the other end of the field as well. Thought Dublin possibly could have pushed a bit further up the field and gambled a little bit, but if they had to get through to that final, I think that Dublin would have won it, and God knows what would have happened. Would you have had players that now play football for Dublin that chose to go down that route that would have gone for hurling because hey, the breakthrough has been made? So I think just it was incalculable the after effects of that red card, Michael.
Yeah, no disrespect to Niall Corcoran, teak tough cornerback, but I think he's a marker. No more than a lot of other lads are markers. I think he's a marker more than a ball player like that. I think you leave a marker marking and you leave a ball player playing in space. That's my own opinions on it. I know that if I was left in space, I'd probably prefer to be marking a fella, and because you're more of a marker. That's just one thing. Yeah, the consequences of Dublin winning All-Ireland are fairly incalculable. It might have swayed a couple of younger fellas, the likes of Cormac Costello and a few of those lads that were coming on the scene maybe at senior level, just maybe to be swayed and go and play in hurling. But definitely over the next 5 to 6 years, the lads that were 12, 13 and 14 that grown up through that would have been far more swayed to go at hurling maybe than football. Definitely, if it was 90% football, 10% hurling, maybe it would be 70-30 because they can realistically see an All-Ireland success. Like, to me, like, All-Ireland success doesn't seem that realistic for Dublin at this moment in time. It would have, like, that would have changed a lot back then, and I think it would leave Dublin higher up now. As well as something else you mentioned there, it's after slipped my mind now, but yeah, I just think it would have had an awful lot of positive spin-off effects for Dublin. It wouldn't have affected maybe the football success now, but in years to come, I think it probably would have had.
Yeah, because Fintan, like, Cork are always generally not too far from getting to an All-Ireland semi-final or final. For Dublin, there hasn't been an All-Ireland semi-final since. They were there in 11 and 13. This was a real chance for them. But, like, you actually broadened out the discussion when I first put it to you, and you were looking at a moment that you thought was a bigger sliding doors moment in 2013.
Yeah, so like, I suppose you're saying that you thought Dublin would have been favourites then in the final. You think they would have gone on to do it?
I think they would have won it, yeah, I think they would have.
The interesting thing if they won it would have been how they would have handled, first of all, for Daly himself, how would he have handled going up against Clare in an All-Ireland final? I mean, that's got to have been incredibly tough. I mean, I suppose it's like Eamon Cregan in '94 is the kind of big example off the top of my head. I'm thinking, you know, how emotionally tough that's going to be, and especially when he was living down there, you know.
But Fintan, do you remember in 2012 that he took Dublin down to play Clare and Ennis in a qualifier, and he walked them up through the centre of Ennis?
That's right. Yeah.
That was Tony Kelly got a big goal that day.
From a free. Yeah.
I think did Clare only have 14 men, and they won that game kind of against the head of it.
I can't remember if they had 14 men, but yeah, I remember Tony Kelly scoring a free.
Yeah.
Just imagine the crack of it as well, though, boys. Like, Daly going back against Clare, obviously. Daly going back against Davy, lads, like Jesus Christ, like, you know, the goalkeeper against the lieutenant, you know. It would have been unbelievable. And you know how, like, Daly's a very emotive man and a very emotional man. Imagine what that would have been like for him. You know, like, people talk about Cregan in '94, as Fintan mentioned there. Like, that was, to be honest, like, that was a no-win situation for him. It was actually. And he was almost devastated at the All-Ireland final, at the whistle. Like, fair enough, he was after bringing euphoria to Offaly, you know, only their third All-Ireland and their first since '94. But he was also after breaking the hearts of the lads he played with, the lads he lives around. So it would have been, it would have been an awful scenario for him in a way. And I know people say, you know, you're professional, you put that aside. Daly wouldn't have been the sort of lad that would have been able to do that. It would have really taxed on his mind, but it would have been really, really interesting.
Somehow this has been hijacked into being a discussion about Offaly, Fintan. Please say this.
Yeah, but can you imagine as well what the hype would have been like in Dublin, because they would have been going for the double that year. And I mean, it would have been the first time. Obviously, 2011, obviously they had a chance to get into a final as well. The hurdles before, but that would have been a massive factor for those players to try and kind of insulate themselves against and to try and cope. So it would have been really interesting to see how they kind of would have managed that, how they could have impacted. But just when you're saying about missed opportunities, it'll allow me to talk about this one. The final, and obviously it's an Offaly man who was refereeing it, Brian Gavin not blowing up, and like what would have been, I think, one of the great All-Ireland match-winning points Patrick Horgan's won.
Oh, sensational.
Would have got Cork over the line. And then obviously then the impact is Donald Donovan becomes the hero, and then the knock-on effect is the Shane O'Donnell factor in the replay. And I think, like, when I think of the 2013 season, it kind of reminds me a bit of 2010 in football as well. It was a weird kind of a random season, the way big teams kind of got knocked out, and it suddenly became a big opportunity for a lot of teams. And that's been borne out what's happened since. So you look at Cork, Dublin, I mean, you mentioned Brian Murphy. Tom Kenny was the other one on that team who had his medals. But for a lot of guys, it didn't happen, who subsequently left. Say Patrick Horgan, Seamus Harnedy are still there trying to win it. It's going to be quite difficult at this stage. You know, opportunities are kind of running out for them. A lot of that Dublin team have moved on. And similarly, you saw a kind of down Kildare 2010. So when these kind of novel seasons kind of happen, and, you know, teams kind of say, oh, there's always kind of next year. I think with the way the hurling decade went, and similarly for Waterford in 2017, when Kilkenny and Tip were out of the equation, the rare seasons when both of them were, that was the chance to kind of strike. And I think Dublin and Cork, I think there's some regrets, I'd say, for both of those players, that was the season and that was the chance for them.
It's funny that Fintan kind of feels hard done by an Offaly whistler. That was famously the day that Davy said about we're only the small fish. He felt totally hard done by. He felt that Gavin kind of nearly swung the game in Cork's favour that day. And like, I could see the clock was just ticking to it, and as a neutral watching that game, you're just thinking, oh, just give them one more chance, just give them one more chance. And it was funny because a sliding door moments goes like that was Donald Donovan is the last person you wanted the ball to fall to. They played against Laois that year in the qualifiers, and I think Donald Donovan was the only one of the 1 to 15 that did, apart from maybe the goalie Pat Kelly, and Pat Kelly might have even scored. He was the only outfield player that didn't score, and he was kind of had an awkward kind of a style. It was the last thing you thought was possible, and then as Fintan says, that had such a knock-on effect to the Shane O'Donnell thing, and other knock-on effects like that would have probably finished Shane O'Neill's career somewhat with Cork as well. There's so many knock-on effects that happened as a result of like Ryan O'Dwyer getting sent off, and then like maybe Brian Gavin playing an extra 30 seconds. It's mad. The GA is like, but that's what we kind of love about it as well, you know.
Yeah, well, like, to be fair, Cork should have looked after the sideline and played it into the corner rather than going for a score. And another thing is, if you're going to bring up referees wrong and ye, am I going to bring up Diarmuid Curwen? Is this going to happen?
Oh God, but I don't think Tipper gone from the championship in the middle of 2013. This is the season we're focusing on. We're not going back to previous.
Sure, the lad was talking about 1995, 1994.
You talk about Donald Donovan as well. The other one to remember for that is how well Nicky O'Connell did. Like at that stage, you think your head is fried in the 74th minute of a match, and to kind of still stick to the kind of style of play and all that, and to kind of look for the man in the best position. He did unbelievably well. Look, I suppose the impact as well managerially of that season, like what it would have done for Daly stock if Dublin had won that All Ireland, and then Jimmy Barry Murphy's kind of stature come back and win another All Ireland with Cork, and then obviously what it did for Davy, the fact that he did it as a manager and a player, and then what he did with Wexford last year, who he's kind of the clean sweep of the big hurling trophies. So yeah, it as a kind of a starting point in this series, it does kind of like a red card and a point. It isn't often that you can point to them and see the after effects and kind of still kind of trace them back trace them forward to what's happening now.
Okay.
Can I just say, Shane, I will shoehorn an Offaly reference in here anywhere. Brian Gavin was refereeing the 2013 All-Ireland final, the drawing game, and Diarmuid Curwen, whose father is from Offaly in Ballyskinnock in County Offaly, was refereeing the 2009 All-Ireland final when the penalty was given that you didn't think one was. So you name the situation. It's like degrees of separation. I will find an Offaly angle to any situation you give me.
Yeah, we've seen it. I was just waiting for Jimmy Cooney to be brought in somewhere along the lines as well. Right, thanks very much, Fintan. Appreciate it.
No worries, lads.
And Michael, thank you very much. We'll see you
again soon.
Thanks a million.